السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا بكم في برنامج نيوكاسل مع وليد في هذه الحلقة الخاصة مع الإعلامي ستيف ريث. طبعا ختام الموسم الإنجليزي قررنا نجيب أفضل أو يعني أكثر الضيوف تميزا لدينا في إعلام نيوكاسل. طبعا الأستاذ ستيف ريث طبعا إعلامي معروف في نيوكاسل وممثل كبير. كان لي الشرف في مشاركته أحد الأدوار البسيطة في أحد أفلامه في الصيف في فترة كأس العالم. طبعا كثير منكم لا يعرف، لكن الإعلامي ستيف ريث كان له دور كبير وأساسي في المرحلة اللي وصلت فيها الآن. طبعا يعني كنا أعضاء عنده في برنامج، أو ما زلنا أعضاء عنده في برنامج NFC ماترز اللي هو شؤون نيوكاسلية، البرنامج الأول في نيوكاسل الأخبار الرياضية. Ladies and gentlemen, lads and lasses, of course, we are having the great Steve Wraith here with us, and for who doesn't know Steve Wraith, he's actually the one who discovered me and presented me in Newcastle more than 3 years ago. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks very much, Waleed. Great to be back on the show. I see you've teleported in to the pitch. The new start of the program. It's the first time I've seen it. I've caught your program every now and then, but never seen the intro. So very good, very impressive.
Thank you. This is kind of old movie, but I found it so
it's like
cool.
Star Trek. It's like Star Trek.
Exactly, 70s and 80s. What a day of a finish! Of course, for me, is the best day in Premier League. Is the last day. We're enjoying most of the games. But first, let's talk about Newcastle-Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a typical end-of-season game. Newcastle versus Chelsea was never going to be. It was never going to be a classic. Chelsea have had a poor season by their own standards, but Newcastle United went down to Stamford Bridge, full of confidence. And the only problem that Newcastle were going to face today was the lack of first team players, if you like, players who've played the best part of the season. Joe Linton, obviously, out, Nick Pope out, Dan Burn on the bench. So it was a weakened side to what we've been used to seeing. But Newcastle got off to a great start, and it was great to see Anthony Gordon, score a goal, get his name on the score sheet, and finally. Break the duck, as we say in England. And I think for me personally, I look at Anthony Gordon. We had the NUFC Matters get together last night, our end of season celebration. And I think most of us felt that Anthony Gordon is going to be a huge player for us next season. So, a good pre-season, a little bit luck with injuries, a little bit of Eddie Howe coaching. And I think we've got a very, very, very special player on our hands. The equaliser, it was one of those things. It was an own goal by Trippier. It's an own goal that he wouldn't want credited to him, and Chelsea's player would have preferred to have that extra goal themselves. But the second half was very, very poor. It was just a typical end of season game. Nothing to play for. Newcastle have qualified for the Champions League, so the best they could hope for was not to lose the game and for Manchester United not to win. But it wasn't to be. Manchester United, unfortunately winning 2-1. Mitrovic, former Newcastle United, centre forward, missing his fourth penalty of the season, which meant, of course, that Manchester United went on to win the game 2-1, and Newcastle finished fourth. And overall, I don't think we can complain. I think there will be a lot of Newcastle fans who will be maybe just a little bit disappointed that we didn't finish above Manchester United this season. And it's still the only Premier League team that Newcastle United have never finished above. So for me personally, I'm not bothered. We've qualified for the Champions League. If you told me at the start of the season we were going to finish in the top four, I would have said thank you very much. And it's a happy summer, and it's a season you didn't want to end, Waleed. You and I have been friends for the last couple of years now, and we've already been on a roller coaster experience. We've battled relegation together, and you came to England and gave the Geordies a lot of confidence by saying we will not be relegated when Eddie Howe took the manager's job. And you were right. We made the great escape last season, and now we've become the record breakers because ultimately this team has broken a lot of records which have stood for a long, long time. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time, Waleed.
Speaking of relegation, how does it feel? How does it feel? Now we're gonna talk a bit about the relegation and without being in this place for a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a million years ago that Newcastle were involved in a relegation battle, which is crazy. But looking at the teams that have gone down, Southampton, Leeds and Leicester today confirmed as the other two teams. I'm disappointed that it wasn't Everton. I have to be honest. And I know really it's something which has developed over the last 10 years. I think the dislike for Everton, I think from our perspective, there's an edginess in those games between Newcastle and Everton, and out of the two teams, I think I would have liked to have seen them gone down. There will be many who will look at that league table and go, Everton should have been punished for these financial irregularities. Maybe that's something that might still happen, but it will now happen too late for Leicester and Leeds, who may have benefited from a points deduction during the season. But overall, the three teams that finish in the bottom three are the teams that deserve to go down. I won't shed any tears over Sam Allardyce being relegated. I don't think he'll be at Leeds next season. I think with Leicester going down, it may give Newcastle an opportunity to move for one, if not two, of their players. Maddison, who's been linked with Newcastle, of course, for the last three transfer windows. Harvey Barnes, who scored today, potentially another player that Newcastle might have an interest in. It's only speculation in the UK, but that's going to be the key word for the next 2 months, speculation. But yeah, I think for me personally, that will benefit Newcastle. There's one or two players potentially who are at Leeds who Newcastle may make a move for as well. So Ward-Prowse, of course, as well at Southampton, who was on the score sheet again today, who potentially could be another player that Newcastle might look at because they are looking for midfield players. But yeah, it will be interesting to see if Newcastle move for any of them. But those three teams certainly deserve to go down. And wasn't it great just to have an end of season where nothing mattered for us? We weren't worried about anything. We didn't have to worry about somebody winning a game behind us, possibly taking a Champions League place away from us, or somebody winning behind us to relegate us. So it was lovely. It was really nice to be in that situation, Waleed.
How much on a scale 1 to 10 are you satisfied about Newcastle this season, regardless everything and regardless obstacles?
I mean, if you're going to say, 10, out of 10, what would you give the season? I would say 11, because it's gone far beyond Newcastle United fans' expectations. I mean, my prediction at the start of the season was to have a good cup run and to finish in the top 7. I genuinely felt that after the run we put in last season, with a couple of good signings, that Newcastle could finish in a European place this season. I would never have predicted Champions League. I genuinely didn't think we would be in a Champions League position, but here we are, and I'm delighted that we are in that position. But yeah, you've got to give it 11, because there's been so many positives. There's been, the re-emergence of some players who we had all written off under Steve Bruce and under Mike Ashley. We saw it last season. We saw Joe Linton start to become the player that everyone said he was when he signed for the club. We've seen Almiron turn effort and commitment into goals, which he'd never done before on any great level. We've seen Callum Wilson, who has had such a poor track record with injuries, come back into the team and suddenly go on on this amazing goal scoring run, which saw him net 11 goals in April. We've seen Kieran Trippier, who is by far the best fullback I have seen at Newcastle United since I started supporting the club in 1984. We've seen him lead the club by example. I could go on. We've seen so many wonderful performances. We've seen the emergence of Isak, who none of us really knew a great deal about. But when he made, that amazing appearance that night at Anfield, we knew this player was going to be special. So we've had so many, massively positive things, and of course a cup final. Every fan loves a cup final, and to finally go back to Wembley and go to the new Wembley for the first time in 24 years was just wonderful. I count myself, very lucky to have been there, to have seen, the club come out at Wembley again, to be there with my family, and to witness Newcastle fans, behave impeccably in front of a worldwide audience and really make their mark. And I think those are the kind of things which will stay with me from this season. And I think, Mitch on NUFC Matters often talks about Stockholm Syndrome. He talks about Newcastle fans expecting the worst. And I think I have had moments like that. Brighton at home only a couple of weeks ago, where Newcastle had to win that game to really cement their place in the Champions League. I still had that kind of we're not going to do this, but ultimately we did do it, and that's been the case. I had a similar kind of feeling when we had the semi-final, the second leg of the semi-final at St James's Park for the Carabao Cup. We're not going to do this, and of course we didn't. For me, I think it'll get easier. I think we will go next season, and we'll, when we start off on the same kind of footing, we do well. We will have to get used to this, and I think Noel Gallagher, the singer-songwriter from the band Oasis, was interviewed on TalkSport this week, and he said Newcastle will start winning things. He says, wait till their fans, and their club start winning things, and he is right. Newcastle will not be second place for much longer. They, in cup finals, they'll be winning the trophies.
You said, Steve, it's you answer like the scale for Newcastle performance this season is 11 out of 10. This is a brilliant answer, and I can't agree more. But regarding the next season, what do you think the minimal expectation for Newcastle from now on, and starting with next season? For example, if I will answer this question, I would say top 4. Going after the group stage in Champions League, and go at least semi-final in Carabao or FA Cup.
Yeah, I would agree. Because with a season like that comes expectation. Newcastle will have to, work out the best way to deal with squad rotation, which is going to be important next season. You won't be able to play, the same core players, for 3 games a week. It just physically wouldn't be possible. So first and foremost, Newcastle have to have a really good pre-season with transfers. They have to hit the ground running. They've purchased a lot of young talent. I mean, Harrison Ashby, of course, we've got Lewis Miley coming through. We've got Elliot Anderson coming through. But we also have, people like Garen Kowal, who probably will go out on loan. But bringing those young players who are going to be part of that first team squad is quite important. I also feel they will sign some big players. Listen to Eddie Howe's press conference every game, and he's talked about bringing in, some marquee players, marquee signings. So that's good to hear. Whether Newcastle can get those players in, waits to be seen. But the fact that we have Champions League football is a massive bonus. So yeah, I think next season the expectation levels are high, but I would be hoping for Champions League 100%, another 4th or 5th place finish, and another good cup run or 2. We are the unknown quantity in the Champions League. People won't want to draw Newcastle United because, they will know Manchester United, they will know Manchester City, they will know Arsenal. They don't know Newcastle. We've not been in the Champions League for 24 years. They won't have experienced an atmosphere quite like ours. And if you think War Flags have done a good job for the Premier League games, wait until we have the Champions League games. It is going to be special. So for me, yeah, I think expectation will rise, but it should rise. And something that sticks with me from, the shows that we've done on my platform is conversations we've had with yourself and with Stu Penman, obviously, who's in Bahrain, and Mitch, who's in Dubai, is one simple thing, that Saudis do not like to come second. They want to be first in everything. And that's the key to all of this. PIF are the major shareholders, owners of Newcastle United, and they will be delighted with the way things have gone, and I'm sure they will want to continue in the same vein. So anything less than a European slot next season would be seen as failure. I think if Newcastle did dip, I think if they had a good run in the Champions League, they got to the knockout stages. I think if they got to a cup final, but then they finished, let's say they finished 8th, 9th, fell out of the European slots. I think there would be disappointment, but I think there would be a little bit of understanding, and it comes down to investment, really, getting your investment right and getting your players and your recruitment right. So I think there will be a little bit of food for thought, because I think we have progressed quicker than anyone really thought we would, and as Eddie Howe accepts, the expectancy level raises with that kind of progression. But I do think the owners would give Eddie Howe a chance to put things right the following season. You can't suddenly expect these players to go into the biggest European competition in the world and balance that with a Premier League season and still maintain the same levels as they have this season. So there's got to be a bit of give and take. It makes it really exciting next season. It'll probably mean Eddie Howe has a few sleepless nights and gets a few grey hairs. But yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting for supporters, and it's just great to be concerned about things like that, rather than whether we're going to drop out of the the Premier League and start the derbies with Sunderland and Middlesbrough again.
I'm expecting a half lineup in the transfer window, at least to compete next season.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think we'll do well in the transfer window. I think Champions League qualification has changed things. It'll certainly have changed that list of players that Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth and co have put together. It's just we are a little bit hampered by financial fair play, and that and also hampered by the fact that top players want top wages, and that's going to be the big thing. Kieran Trippier came to Newcastle United and didn't come for the money. He took a drop in wages to come and play for Newcastle. Now that's outstanding to hear that, you know what I mean? And from our perspective, we need that from other players. We need that from James Maddison if he's going to become a Newcastle United player in the next few weeks. We need him to come because he wants to come. He wants to buy into the project. He wants to win things, and he wants to, be part of something. And I think that's the way, those are the players you want anyway. You want players who want to play for the black and white shirt and want to win a trophy. So it'll be interesting. I certainly think that Trippier will have certainly been working on one or two of those players in the England squad and persuading them to come. A lot of people saying Harry Kane. I mean, I think Harry Kane will probably go to Manchester United. A lot of people say he's too old. Is he really too old? Harry Kane coming to Newcastle, at the age he is, we could still get a couple of good years out of him, and we could win a trophy with Harry Kane banging the goals in and breaking Shearer's record. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. Anything is possible at the moment because we are a different club to where we were 2 years ago. So I just think the fans need to be patient, but the fans need to be excited, and the fans should look forward to next season. It's as simple as that.
Hopefully, and I would like Harry Kane, but I'm not really sure how much Levy wants for him. He will not be like a free agent. He will be.
Yeah, true. He won't be 150 million pounds though, which is what what they quoted Manchester City. And I bet he's regretting not going there now. When you look at how things have turned out, lack of European qualification for Spurs is embarrassing, but it's also very hurtful financially for them. So, you know, they're going to have to make changes, and they may have to cash in on Harry Kane. Would Levy want to see Harry Kane go to one of his rivals, Newcastle, Manchester United? You would probably say no. Does Harry Kane and his agent have any choice to where they go? He might have to sit there. He might have to run his contract down and you know, do it that way. But it's all interesting. It is all interesting.
Aren't you afraid that Kane maybe break Alan Shearer record?
And if he does it in Manchester United, I'll be so disappointed, and they will rub it in our face.
But in Newcastle, okay.
He scored 30 goals in a terrible team this season, and that is an amazing record. He's a class striker, world class still England's striker. Why not? You know, Jamie Vardy's 34 and, you know, was up until half an hour ago playing in the Premier League. So, you know, it is possible to get at least another 2 years out of Harry Kane. And imagine Harry Kane playing at Newcastle. Yeah, with that crowd behind him, I think he'd love it. But that's what makes the summer exciting. Anything is possible. Exactly.
And I just thinking in my head, Harry Kane, Wilson, Isaac, amazing, really, front line.
Yeah,
I will answer the question in last 10 minutes. We will ask Steve the question. طبعا بالنسبة للأسئلة راح تكون آخر 10 دقائق، فاللي عنده سؤال يسأل الآن. Steve, let's take a look beyond the team and the games. How you see Newcastle management in general? Which action or decision by the club you like the most this season?
I think the management's been superb. You know, the beauty of this season is that we've been able to sit and listen to Eddie Howe's press conferences each game and get a true idea and reflection of what he is all about, and get a good idea of what the local press ask, you know, because a lot of us only see what the press want to write, but now we're getting a chance to hear what questions they're asking. And that again helps the communication side of things. Overall, it's been an 11 out of 10 for the ownership and for the management. I think that Eddie's substitutions is probably what have impressed me the most. Under the previous manager, Steve Bruce, we only had a plan A, and even that wasn't very good. But we had, under Eddie Howe, a plan B and a plan C. And if things didn't work, then he would change it. He wasn't afraid to change things. He wasn't going into games and listening to what supporters or the media were saying and making changes because of that. He was making changes because of what he'd seen on the pitch. And a lot of the time he says that it's down to training. I'll make that decision in training. And you can see that he does. There's been one or two surprises. I think the success this season has been based on a solid, regular, reliable back four. I think a lot of us were very surprised to see Dan Burn stay at left back. I think a lot of us expected to see Matt Targett back in that position. And Dan Burn played well for probably 95% of those games. The 5% that he didn't was purely down to the fact that, you know, he was either carrying a little niggle or an injury, or he was tired. But it was the fact that they just played so well together that, you know, Matt Targett just couldn't get back in. But the back four and the goalkeeper were, the main reason I think why we did so well. And Eddie did the right thing, keeping them together. He also, he had to try and find a way of bringing in Isak, and his plans were slightly thrown up in the air when Isak, was concussed, and he lost him again. And then that was at the same time that Callum Wilson was going through that little bad run of form, and Newcastle just stuttered a little bit around the cup final. And that was unfortunate for us, because I think had Isak and Wilson had games together and been able to forge that kind of on-pitch relationship, I think we would have won that final. It's unfortunate. That's just the way that it worked out. But I think, overall, I think they got most of the decisions right. And, even even the way that he deals with things in the press conference. And if you're going to say to me, what was the thing that impressed you the most? I think it was the way that he dealt with controversial issues. We've already seen him in numerous press conferences this season be asked about the Saudi ownership of the club. And I love the way that he answers those questions. You know, he concentrates on the football. Of course, we discuss these things. Of course, we're aware of this. However, from our perspective, we concentrate on the football. And I think dealing with that question, as he has done, has made dealing with the football questions easier. And I think the big controversial moment in recent months was Anthony Gordon's reaction to being substituted. And when Anthony Gordon was taken off, he wasn't very happy because he just literally gone onto the pitch. It was a tactical substitution, and he thought he was injured. And when he took him off, Anthony reacted in quite a petulant manner. And I thought the way Eddie dealt with that on the pitch side and subsequently in the press conference said a lot about him, you know, and subsequently Anthony Gordon was still, you know, featuring and part of it. He was in the team photo after that game. And it's just little things. It's good man management. And I think that he's been ably assisted by Tyndall. And we've seen quite funnily enough, we've seen, you know, Tyndall be, you know, accused of gamesmanship and being somebody who is trying to, you know, steal the thunder of his manager, step in his way and become like the main figure. They've laughed about that, and they've worked together as a team like that since Bournemouth and beyond. So, from our perspective, we're very, very lucky to have these two guys, you know, side by side in the dugout and in the technical area. And I think they've done a great job, and long may it continue.
Yeah, brilliant, Steve. Of course, you are a season ticket holder since years. How you compare the fan atmosphere in St. James's Park comparing to the end of last season?
Well, compared to the end of last season, it was similar in a way because we pulled off the great escape. If we go back to the first season under Steve Bruce, it's a different place altogether. There was unrest under Ashley and Bruce. There was depression. There was 10,000 empty seats at times, and it was horrendous. It's up there, the atmosphere, with the 90s when Newcastle had Kevin Keegan and the Entertainers. It's very, very similar to then. Overall, because of the flags and the scarves and the atmosphere that wore flags create, it is a different level. It is different. I can think back to a couple of games that I've attended over the years where the atmosphere has been better. Newcastle 5, Manchester United 0. Newcastle 3, Barcelona 2. Newcastle 5, Sunderland 1. Those 3 games, plus Andy Cole scoring his 40th goal for Newcastle United, breaking Hughie Gallagher's record, and Alan Shearer's testimonial. Those 5 games, St. James's Park, for me, has never been louder. Almost to the point of being at a concert with AC/DC and, you know, having your ears blown off with a crowd. It was that. The Andy Cole one, I think, is probably the one where it went mental. Shearer, again, is another one I'm thinking of. Yeah, Shearer breaking Jackie Milburn's record. That's another game which I'd probably add to that list. Other than that, Newcastle's had its moments. Keegan leaving in the helicopter. I was at that game in 1984 when he was a player. But I don't remember the atmosphere being as loud but it was crazy, and it was a great night. But those games that I mentioned probably were the best nights I've had at St. James's Park. So yeah, it's getting there. It's a happy place to be. It's a positive place to be, and it's a loud place to be.
Fans, Steve, the club of Newcastle now doing a lot of effort regarding the fans. So I have a couple of matters here. Would like to have your opinion and take on it. First of all, the fan advisory board. From your point of view, do you think it will solve the issue of the fan we have right now?
Look, Newcastle United are making more effort now than they have ever done in my lifetime as a Newcastle fan. And my first game was 1984. To communicate with the supporters. They've set up the fan advisory. They've set up supporter services. They are in dialogue with certain groups. An email goes out to season ticket holders, inviting them to register for a place at a meeting, about certain things. So emails go out with a survey and asking you to fill in the survey. So, ultimately, it is better. I haven't been to any of these meetings, any of these fans advisory meetings, so I can't tell you what happens there. But the feedback that you seem to get from a lot of these groups is positive, and it's got to be healthier than dealing with one group. I think that if you're dealing with one group of supporters, then you're only getting one group of supporters' ideas, feelings, etc. So it's got to be positive to have something like that, as long as they are, speaking to all supporters and taking every suggestion into account before making a decision. That's probably the best way to answer it. I'm not going to criticize the club for doing something positive. Just got to hope that, it's not a talking shop, and they're not, they're not going to go down the route of previous owners where they'll talk to one set of fans and do what they want, but not take into consideration what everybody else wants to do. And I don't see any reason why they'll do that. Hopefully, moving forward, it's going to go forward in the same vein,
Newcastle want to be first level in every matter.
Yeah.
We see the owners when they have a visit to Manchester City to see the recent equipment who have. But I would like to talk about international fan supporter. In your opinion, why? And if we see fan supporter everywhere for the clubs of Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, Tottenham, but I see Newcastle want to do something different than the other teams. They would like, for example, I will explain a little bit about it. I understand now is the new idea, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I get now from this season. At the end of the season, they're doing the fan supporter club as a company. There is a company who would have a sponsor of Newcastle. They try to make it they become the fan supporter club. There is good things, and for my opinion, there is a positive things and negative things. Most negative things, the companies have no passion for the club. They are not supporting Newcastle, so they will be just doing it as a job. So why we are different on this matter, you think?
I've got to be honest, I haven't really heard a great deal about what they're doing for, supporters abroad. So I'd need really to have a little bit more look into it before I could comment on it, Waleed. But, ultimately...
I'm talking here about Saudi Arabia. We have now just a place to watch games. Yeah. So they call it as supporter club.
Okay. So what are you looking for, Waleed? What do you want?
I'm looking for make a community help, have a direct help, because I noticed the effort of the club focus on Newcastle City, not the other outside or the overseas. We have a language barrier. We have a lot of things that need effect and quick deal with the fans.
I think the best thing really for anybody to do, no matter what country they're in, is just to contact Newcastle United supporter services. They are very quick in replying to people and getting back in touch with people. But they are the people who have been given the job of dealing with supporters. So if somebody wanted to make a suggestion, so for example, Toon Stato on NUFC Matters, Andre, who runs the Bulgarian Football Supporters Association for Newcastle, he set that up. They've done that for years. He came over with 20 Bulgarians a few weeks back. He went up to the club the day after, and they met the club. They had a meeting, and what they discussed, I don't know, but I think that's the best way to deal with with things. And there's a saying in England: Rome wasn't built in a day. And, Newcastle United can't do everything as quickly as people would hope for. There are only so many hours in the day, I guess, and only so many people who are given the task of doing these certain things. So I guess they will get to people. There are so many countries around the world, and so many people who probably want to do something. And if I'm right in saying this, I think the supporter services in the past, I think, was one or two people. I think it may be 3 or 4 now who are working on that team, but don't take that for granted, for gospel, sorry. But if there's 3 or 4 people working now, Waleed, on something, then it's a big job for those people to get in touch with everybody. But from what I've seen personally, and from my limited communication with these people, they have got in touch quite quickly when I've sent them an email. So maybe that's the best thing to do. We when we spoke to them, me, Steve Hasty, and Keith Patterson went to the club and met Sarah Metcalf and one of her staff. We just had a casual 1-hour conversation about various things, and we were interested to know what their plans were and what they were hoping to do and what they were hoping to achieve on a fan's level, and was there anything we could do to help them? But it just will take time. And I know, I worked for the football club in that job 23 years ago, and it is difficult. It was more difficult for me because the club weren't really interested. They weren't really interested in helping me, and I literally was a one-man band. Whereas there are multiple people working in this job now, so hopefully it will be better. I know that there are some supporters clubs who want some kind of affiliation with the club, but I don't think the club at this moment in time want to go down that particular level and that particular avenue. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, my advice would to any supporters who live abroad who've got an organisation which they would like some kind of communication with the club is email supporterservices@nufc.co.uk.
Of course, Steve, and the reason I asked that, because here we have 1 million of Saudi Arabia. They are very interested and would like to have better communication with Newcastle Club. And as you said, Rome wasn't built in a day, and the takeover, it didn't happen also in a day.
No, and it should have.
All right, then. Now, last 10 minutes, we'll go for the questions. I will start with this before going to the fan question. Steve, I received from my friends today in earlier show that Alan Maximan write something in Instagram, and pardon my French, I try to translate what it says, and the question I received, is it that goodbye? I translated. He said something like, never forget who was present when no one else was. Time passes, memories fade, feelings change, people leave us, but the heart never forgets, making history. What's your take on that?
I and many others on NUFC Matters have said for the last couple of months that we feel that Alan Maximan will leave Newcastle United this summer. I personally feel that he's not the kind of player that Eddie Howe wants, and I think we've seen from his team selections that he's not, when he's fit, he's not first choice, and that's not really going to sit well with Alan Maximan, and I think he will move to a European club this summer. There's been a lot of cryptic messages when Eddie Howe has said that Alan Maximan is not fit. We've seen images of Alan Maximan on a running machine. Every time he has said something about him, he's almost been in conflict with him, but in a very clever way on social media. So he's been a servant. Has he been a good servant? I'd say 50-50. I know Trolls, who follows our shows, loves Alan Maximan. I was with a guy last night called Dingo, who is another huge Alan Maximan fan. It will split opinion of supporters. And I had a conversation with Dingo last night who was saying we shouldn't let him go. We should keep him. He's a valuable member of the squad. He can do things that other people can't do. Malcolm MacDonald, of course, who played for Newcastle United, will say, how many goals does he score? How many assists does he get? The answer this year is not very many. So ultimately, Is he a player that you can rely on? Is he a player that's going to help Newcastle win a trophy? Is he a player that Newcastle United can afford to carry? I don't think he is. And I think Newcastle will benefit more from selling Alan St-Maximin and bringing in somebody who fits Eddie Howe's project and strategies and can play in the formation that he plays. The other good thing is that it will help from a financial fair play view. It'll be money going out, money coming in, a player going out, and we'll be able to bring somebody else in. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. Will we hold Alan St-Maximin in the same high esteem as we do maybe, Shearer, Gascoigne, Beardsley, Waddle? Of course we won't. Most of us won't anyway. He's up there with Lauren Robert and Ben Arthur. At times a wonderful player to watch, an unpredictable player to watch, but a frustrating player to watch at times. And I wish him well, thank him for everything he did. But I do think Alan St-Maximin will leave Newcastle United this summer.
Yeah, I believe so. Ian asked, do you think that Leicester have going down now? Definitely are getting Maddison.
Hi Ian, hope you're well, mate. I think Maddison will certainly be on the list still. He was on the list 3 transfer windows ago, sorry. He's going to be cheaper now, a lot cheaper that he's been relegated to the Championship. He's good friends with Trippier. He's the kind of player Newcastle need. He would vastly improve that team. The problem we've got, Ian, is that if there's any delay in a decision, Newcastle will move on. And that's the problem, because they'll feel that they've missed out not once, not twice, but 3 times. They won't want to be messed around. They'll want him in early. He'll want to move early, I'm sure, but he'll also have his eye on the contract. And it's whether he is prepared to come in a similar vein to Kieran Trippier, because Newcastle will not be going mad with wage increases. They won't be breaking this, the ceiling, if you like, on wages this transfer window. So from our perspective, I think we will go back for him. Will we get him? It's down to the price, but it's also down to the player. The player has to want to come, and he has to want to come early. And I think if that's the case, we will see James Maddison in a Newcastle shirt sooner rather than later.
Which players are we expecting, Steve, next year?
Deba, thanks for the question. I genuinely don't know is the honest answer. I obviously do my own podcast. We have some, well-respected journalists who come on to the platform. I think that, Liam Kennedy and Ben Jacobs both have their ear to the ground locally and nationally. And we tend to get good information from both of those guys. If I was going to throw a few players in there, then James Maddison is obviously on there. And he was the player who, I think last time I was on our lead show, I said I would like at Newcastle. So I've been banging the drum for Maddison since, the very first transfer window. Be great to see him across the line. I do think that the link with Arsenal's fullback Tierney is a big one as well. I think that's potentially the 2 deals that we will get across the line early. After that, we're going into the realms of speculation. We've been linked with Diaby for so long now that you would imagine if ASM goes, that Diaby might be the replacement if we can get the wages. And I'm not even going to attempt the guy's name. His first name's Dominic. His surname begins with an S. Sabosley or whatever it is. That's a horrendous attempt, but that's not what it is. But you know who I mean. Again, he's been linked massively, but that's big money. That would probably be maybe a step too far in this window if we bring in Maddison, Diaby, and Tierney. I think that would be stretching it. Can we dream about a Harry Kane? We can. Is it going to be reality? I doubt it. But you never know. You just never know what's going on behind closed doors at Newcastle this day, and that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, behind the closed doors. Can we beat Man City or Arsenal next season?
That's the next step up, isn't it? We played Manchester City very early. I think if you play Manchester City or Arsenal early, you've got a chance of getting a win against them. If we get Arsenal or Manchester City at home the first game of the season next year, I'd say yes, you've got a good chance. But once they get into that run, Manchester City, I think, lost today, but it was the first defeat in 26 games. You're going to struggle. The best you can usually hope for is a draw. But it depends who we sign. Newcastle aren't going into those games expecting to get beaten now. They're going into those games expecting to get something. Arsenal, we've beaten them in recent seasons. So I think we can beat Arsenal next season. Manchester City are on a completely different level. We are not light years behind them, but we are a considerable distance behind Manchester City, and they've had a big head start on us. So we might be able to beat them at some point. But, Brentford did the double over them this season. And I know they're playing them on the last game of the season, but at the start of the season, they beat them they beat them as well. So it just depends when you play them. It really does. But yeah, of course we can. Yeah, be positive.
Brilliant, Steve. Barry, what do you think of young Miley?
He's a great talent, Barry. He's a youngster. He's come through the ranks, and Eddie Howe clearly has a lot of faith in him. It was great to see Miley, finally feature in the squad and the team this season. And I think genuinely moving forward, he will become a big part. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think we will have we've got a great player on our hands there, and he's homegrown as well. So he will get a chance next season, probably in the Carabao Cup.
The biggest challenge next season is to keep the dressing room and the player united.
Yes, Abdul, you're right. And that is always going to be affected by new players coming in and players going out. You can see why he wants to keep the likes of Paul Dummett, Matt Ritchie at the club, because they are big influences within the dressing room and training ground. So he doesn't want to lose those players. And, when you take somebody out of the dressing room like that, it can affect it. So, yeah, I can see why he wants to keep players, but there is no room for sentiment either. So you can't just keep a hold of players for that reason. Eventually, those players will go, and you have to find somebody who's going to come in who's not going to upset the dressing room. So from our perspective, it's nothing we can do about it. We just have to support the team and support the players when they come in, and hope that Eddie and the lads can continue the wonderful unity in the dressing room. But yes, Abdul, you're right.
Steve, away from Newcastle, I still have your award.
Well done.
Remember
yes,
that Oscar, still have it. You still did. I forget to give it to you when I was in Newcastle. How is the latest with you with the movies, and what's the feedback on the new creed of criminal?
Well, there it is. I'm always promoting it. New breed of criminal. Still got it comes out later this year. We don't know the date yet. It's just been at the Cannes Film Festival, so it's done very well out there. Different territories have now purchased the film, which is great news for us. I'm busy writing the second script. The distributors asked us to write the New Breed of Criminal 2. So that's good news for me. But yeah, it's going well. There's a new film out called Trafficking, which is available, across all downloadable services such as Apple, Sky, Amazon, etc. And it's been a big year on the acting front for me. So yeah, things are positive. Things are going well. And I've got a deadline of the 1st of July to finish that particular script. And I'm filming a horror film next. I'm doing a horror film called Alice in Terrorland. So I'm still busy, still keeping busy, Waleed.
I am honored that I was in the background of some of the scene in the new criminal, creative criminal. And is Waleed acting in the second part?
Well, maybe, yes. We might need an international drug dealer, Waleed. You look the part.
Brilliant, Steve. This was lovely, Steve. As you promised, 50-minute. Thank you, really, Steve. Appreciate it to come as a final honored guest in the end of the season of Premier League. Great season, and really honored and happy to have you tonight.
Man, respect to everybody in Saudi Arabia. Thanks to you for giving us the opportunity, and hopefully see you soon, inshallah.
إن شاء الله أشوفك قريبا. شكرا لكم المتابعة. كان معنا الإعلامي والممثل البريطاني ستيف ريث ضيفنا المميز لختام الموسم. نراكم بعد قليل مع الدكتور فهد الجهني وحديث عن الاستثمار والتسويق الرياضي. شكرا لكم للمتابعة، لا تذهبوا بعيدا.